Hey guys, I'm going to be going through the new Spar system that we have for the new generation of our gliders and electric kits. All of the kits are going to build with this technique, and let's go ahead and get started. When you get your kit, you're going to have the spar slots cut and the recesses cut for your joiner. So what we need to do is we need to prep our spars and prep the joiner. So on the spars that we get, we need to just scuff up and lightly sand the inside of the tube. And this is so that our epoxy will set up with our joiner really well, and make sure that there's no mold release or anything on that spar. So, and then on the joiner is going to come, if it's a model with dihedral, it's going to come with the joiner tube bent. If it's a model with a straight wing, the joiner tube will be flat. Take a piece of coarse sandpaper and roll it up, and go ahead and stick it inside that tube and just scuff it up. We want to take out the anodize on the inside of our joiner. It only takes a couple seconds to get that anodize scooped out of there. You can actually see, if you zoom in on here, you can actually see the anodize came out on the wing. So get rid of that. Okay, now we want to wash those parts off. I use acetone. So, all right, those are cleaned off. Next step right now is going to be gluing our tubes into the main channel. I'm going to use hot glue and then come back over it with goop. On here to bring the camera over. One thing that I want to do, if you look straight down, when I glue this in, I'm going to want to leave, you see where there's the dihedral angles already sanded in. I want to leave just a little bit of space in between where that tube is going to be and the edge of the wing, to make sure that when they come together, I don't bind the center of the wing. So, and you see here where, if you zoom in, where it's going to allow that joiner to come around there. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be putting glue from this point on over, gluing this main spar in, and then we'll be mixing up our epoxy and joining our two wing halves together. So here we go. You keep your wing flat on the table. Just take your hot glue or goop or whatever you guys want to use. I do hot glue with goop over the top. It's quick and it holds really well. Then I go up to that spot. Go ahead and get my spar pushed in, make sure it's flush underneath, and set. Hold that just for a couple of seconds to let the glue set. Do my other side. Okay, so this step is done. We'll go to the next step. Okay, our next step, once we got our spars in, is to go ahead and join the wing together. To save time, we already mixed up some 15-minute epoxy. I've got some 3M77 here to spray on the wing center halves to attach them. And I just want to show you, before I put everything together, we just dry fit it. We take our joiner tube. When I put it on, I want to show you what will happen if you put your joiner tube on, not straight up and down. So let's say it's just kicked forward a little bit and you go to join your two wing halves. What's going to happen is when you come together, you see nothing's lined up. All we got to do is just twist our joiner tube until we're nice and straight, and then everything's going to line up nice and beautiful. And then we'll go ahead and get that glued up, and then we'll get to the next step. So first thing I do is spray my centers with 3M77. I do that over my trash can. That's all they need. And then I go ahead and take my epoxy. Now what I'm going to do here, I don't want to put epoxy on the inside of this hole or this slot that's cut around to fit around the joiner. What I'm going to do is, when I'm done with that, I'm going to force some goop in around that to lock that into place on the outside between the joiner and the foam. I just want the epoxy on the inside between the joiner tube and the spars. So I'm using 15-minute epoxy here. 30 minutes fine if you're fast, 5 minutes fine. Get that on the tube itself. Gravity's going to start pulling it down. The other thing I do then is I like to just drizzle it down into my tube, let it fill up. To make sure I have a nice solid bond both directions. So that's all I need there. So now I can go ahead and take this slider on. I like to give it a little twist to make sure it's all the way around. Here, same thing. Take it, give it a little twist, make sure I got a good bond. And then just go ahead and push everything, line up front and back, push it together. Now from here, we just got to wait that 15 or so minutes for everything to set up, and then we'll come back to do the next step of putting goop on everything. I'm just going to wipe up a little bit of this excess epoxy. Alright. We'll just push this together, and then we'll come back here in 15 minutes and we'll do the next step. Okay, our next step, once we got our wings joined and the epoxy cured up, your kit now is going to come with some 1.5 millimeter to 2 millimeter rods that are going to come with these, and we're going to install. We're going to be putting Spar's top and bottom of the wing and creating a shear web. Found that this is not only stronger, it's a lot lighter, and it's a lot easier to install with eliminating possibilities of warping. So, but coming from the factory, they've got some mold release on them. We want to use some acetone or something else to wipe them down. And you'll see actually on the rag here, the rag gets nice and black from the stuff. I just take them and run them through and twist them, and get these things cleaned up, so that way when I get them glued in, the slots we're going to cut, they're nice and sticky. Okay, so we got our rods cleaned up. That step is done. So the next step is going to be showing you how we actually get these installed onto the wing. So we got our wing here cured up, ready to install our we'll just call them sub spars. They're cut to length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a mark. I'm going to put the 1-inch mark right in the center of my spar. I'm going to make a mark 1 inch forward, 1 inch aft on each side. And I know on this wing that I'm going to be installing the servo somewhere right about there. So I need to have this aft spar coming back somewhere into this direction to give me clearance. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a mark there and right about somewhere in here. So once I have those, I just take a straight edge, and I like to just go ahead and draw this out. Okay, now on the bend on this, because there's a slight bend here, what's going to happen when I draw my knife through, right when I get to the point where these two are going to come together, I'm going to actually deviate from the line just a hair and just take away a little bit of that transition to give a nice round transition for the spar. But what we want to do here, I prefer to do this freehand. If you need to use a straight edge, use a straight edge, but you need to take a brand new razor knife, and we need to take this and plunge it down in about 1/8 of an inch, and then just draw it right across the wing entirely. We don't want to go too deep. We only want to go to about 1/8 of an inch. And if you can see, actually you could see here the ink on the blade. You can tell how deep I've been going, so somewhere in there. Okay, now as I get to the center here, you know where I'm at, I'm actually going to deviate just a hair off of this line just to soften that center section, and then I'll get right back on the line. And then we're going to go ahead and get our glue put in here and get our sub spars installed. So this is where it's actually a lot easier than people think to glue this up. What I'm using is I have a foam tack bottle. It's marked goop. This is just thin goop, or equal portions goop, equal portions either xylene or toluene. Take it, put the tip into the little slot, you gently squeeze, and when you start to see a little bit of the goop come out of the hole as you go, you know that you have plenty of glue inside there. Okay, so now I'm ready for my slip spars, and these are cut to length. So what I do is I get it lined up. I just start right there, just use my thumb, pop it into place, and then just run it along, pushing down with my thumb. It pops into place. Do the same thing with this spar here. There, pop it, push it underneath. Okay, so we have the spars installed on the top. Now the next step that I like to do is I want to go ahead and get the goop pushed underneath here to make sure that this is locked into the wing on the center section as well. And what I'm going to do is I come over the top with goop, and then goop here all the way across, and then I'm going to spread that out. So I like to take my goop and squeeze it down into that hole on each side of that spar. And then I can either push it down in there with my fingers or whatever. And then I'm going to come across the top. Alright, so I got my goop on. Now I'm going to use a credit card. Okay, now the top is essentially done. Here, actually, I'll show you something where when I sanded the dihedral, I got a little bit off on the sanding. No big deal. Just going to use a little bit of that goop just to fill that back up. Lock that into place. So the top here is done. Literally, all I have to do is let this cure. Now, I'm not going to go any farther on this video because there's really no need to, because I can explain to you after you've seen what I've done here. All I'm going to do with the remaining 3 spars here is I'm going to measure where this spar is here, here, here from the trailing edge, and then mirror image these 3 spars. I'm going to mirror image them on the bottom and go ahead and put them across. Doing the same exact techniques of putting them in like I did here. When that is done, this wing is going to be stronger and lighter than the old way we used to do it, and it's a whole lot easier to build, and anytime we can make it easier, we're going to do that. So thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your build.